Welcome to another Samson sit down. This one is a special one. It is not often in the world of baseball that you get a chance to again speak to a manager who was such an important part of your career when it didn't end the way it began, because nothing does. But yet you maintain a relationship, and then years later, you get a chance to do a show together. I'd like to introduce the former manager of the Marlins, the Braves, longtime coach, longtime baseball man, all around incredible person, Fredi Gonzalez.
Well, David, thank you for having me, and thank you for the opportunity that you and Jeffrey gave me to manage my first major league club. And even though, like you said, and you said it beautifully, it never ends like the way you want it to end. But I really am grateful for the opportunity to meet people like yourself, Jeffrey, Larry Beinfest, Mike Hill, which I still have a good connection to.
Fredi, it's so good to see you. And I think that there is such a big misunderstanding in the world of sports because all of us are hired to be fired. And that's the business we chose. And I remember as though it was yesterday when we were in the process of hiring you, and you came on after we had just fired a manager of the year in Joe Girardi. And we thought that we had a opportunity to go with someone who had amazing Miami connections, someone who was going to be way different than Joe, who would work well with our players because we had a young team, an interesting team, and would also work well with Larry, with me, with Mike, with Jeffrey. And you proved over the years that we were together, you were hugely successful. We didn't get to where we wanted to go, but the memory, what's your best memory when the interview process, I've never spoken to you about this. When did you feel as though you were going to get the job? Do you remember that?
Well, I thought I was going to get the job the first time. Remember, I interviewed twice. Well, the second one, it wasn't really an interview, but because you already had interviewed me the year before, and then you went to Joe Girardi, and which is fine. I thought he was a good candidate. So, but I thought I felt really good about that interview with the connection that we made sitting down together in New York with Mike and Larry and yourself, and Jeffrey was there, and I think Dan Jennings was there also, and I thought I hit it. I thought I did a good job. Obviously, I was a little bit disappointed, and as life goes and baseball goes, a year later, almost to the day, Joe doesn't, gets fired, and I get an opportunity to manage a club, and it was a good young club, like you said. It was a rookie of the year. I think we had a guy with a batting title. We had a future Hall of Famer in Miguel Cabrera. And it was a good club, and I really am thankful for that opportunity. That whole first press conference was kind of a whirlwind. If you remember, David, my wife and I guess we flew in, and we were sitting in the front office. I think it was either your office or Larry's office, as I'm watching the press conference with Joe Girardi getting fired, and here it is 2 hours later. My press conference comes in, and I get named the manager of the Florida Marlins, and that was a whirlwind. And
it doesn't happen often, Fredi. So the way that went down is we knew we were firing Girardi, and we knew we wanted you. And here's a little secret: after you interviewed for the 06 job, there was unanimous consent that we wanted you to be the manager. Jeffrey wanted Girardi because he had a relationship with Joe. We're the ones who had the relationship with you. And the concern for Jeffrey was that he wanted to make sure that he had the primary relationship with the manager.
Right.
Until he ends up being the person with the primary relationship with the manager, and Girardi was failing in terms of managing up to the front office. And everything we cautioned him would happened with Joe, right, who was also a first-time manager. And during the season of 06, when we were told to fire Girardi in the middle of the season, and then we rehired him an hour later because there was a mutiny in the young clubhouse, but we knew it was over. We went to Jeffrey and said, You had Girardi. How about Freddie?
And
Jeffrey said to us, Freddie, I'll never forget it. You better be right. And we knew we were right about you. And we brought you in to be in the on-deck circle. So we do a press conference firing Girardi, and then you're waiting and you come in. And the sense of relief with the staff, with everybody in the front office, we were so excited to have you. And it was your first managerial job. And looking back on it, what made you nervous about managing? Because you had been a coach for a super long time, and now you were in your hometown and you were a first-time manager. What was the thing that worried you the most?
David, everything worried me. And I couldn't be more prepared to manage a club in the major league level than I was, right? I was, I played the minor leagues. I managed every level in the minor leagues. I even went to winter ball, managed there in Puerto Rico 1 year, coaching the major leagues for two organizations. And yet, I've never had a relationship with a general manager or an owner for that matter. And that first year, I think I've only told a couple of people this. There was a couple of times during that year that I'm thinking I'm not ready for this. I can't do this. As a matter of fact, the Atlanta Braves came in town, and as you know, Bobby Cox was my mentor during that time, and I had coffee with him. I picked him up at the hotel going towards the stadium. They were a pro player. And I said to him, I said, Skipper, I don't think I could do this. I'm not prepared to do this. And yet I had this great resume, but nothing prepares you to handle, the time constraints, right? The time dealing with the general manager, talking to Jeffrey or the ownership. Nothing prepares you that, no matter how well you feel like you're prepared, until you do it, right? And I think in that conversation at Starbucks there in the Hollywood area where the visiting team was staying, I got called everything but a major league manager by Bobby Cox. He almost grabbed me by the collar and it says, "You could do this. You're prepared to do this. This is the learning experience that you're going to get through." But yeah, there was a couple of times during that year, David, that I'm like, this is over my head. But then
tell
again,
me what was it? The game was going too fast? Was it the in-game decisions that we had not discussed pre-game that you were wondering, is this the right move or not? Was it dealing with the personalities? Was it being the number one person where you can't hide in the coach's room? You are responsible with the media, the front office, the players. Which part did you feel nervous about?
David, it was that. It wasn't the game. The game was fun, but it was. I've never had an owner, call me after a game and have those conversations. I've never had a relationship you have a relationship as a general manager or with a general manager when you're a coach, but when you're a manager or the president of baseball operations, it's totally different, right? And I never had that experience, and so for me to get thrusted into that. It was a comfort. It was something I have never experienced, but I think as that year went along, and it became easier, and then the following year it became even easier than that. Handling the press or dealing with the press and dealing with the players are always simple, but as long as you're honest and they know that they could trust you. And you have their best interests in mind for them, it is easy. But yeah, dealing with the ownership, dealing with a general manager, dealing with the media.
Hold on, Freddie. On this show, we tell truths. You're going to tell me that Hanley Ramirez was an easy player to manage?
No, he wasn't. But I've had more difficult players. Well, it's out there, right, in the media. That famous day that we
He's
took him
not
out of
the hardest player you ever had to manage?
No, not the hardest. I've had some other guys that I don't want to name in the minor leagues that were hard and almost get in a fight with. But Hanley was difficult, but he was really really talented. So and he was fine. And he was fine. That was good. He wasn't. Yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay.
He
You have a
wasn't
dog.
He wasn't the easiest guy to deal with, but boy, was sure is talented. So. and you can live with that, right? I
Is
mean,
that part of it, that the relationship between difficulty and talent is that talent will always win the day? As a manager, were you willing to put up with way more from someone talented versus a fringe player? Because as a president of a team, I would allow for talent to win the day almost always, and it isn't necessarily the best thing to do for a clubhouse.
it isn't, but I agree with you, David. It's as long as you tilt the field, right? If nobody wants you to take you out to dinner because you're a pain in the ass, or you're having all these warts on you, but you're putting up numbers, you're the best player on the field, you can live with that. You can live with that because you're absolutely talent always wins, and he was a talented young man. I think won the batting title, played shortstop every day, and all the way to the end of his career, he put up numbers. And at the end, after that incident that we had, and it was one of those situations, David, that it was like if I didn't do anything, I would lose the other 24 guys on the team. So it was like, okay, you're the best player on the field, but this is not the way that we play the game here. And I felt like there was 24 sets of eyes, including my coaching staff, that was going, okay, big boy, what are you going to do now? And
So the incident you're talking about is that in 2009, I think it was, there was an issue with Hanley and some on-field issues that we did not like what he was doing, and you disciplined him, and you had our complete support because obviously we had talked to you about it, and it was a tough one to deal with because Hanley was he could be surly and grumpy, and there was a chance that he could infect the clubhouse in more so than he even was. But at the end of the day, our view was that if you don't do this, then it's going to cost us a chance to be what we can be as a team. And
do you
during the
remember the
course,
incident?
it was from shortstop going into short left field.
Yeah, it
He
was like,
lollygagged.
yeah, the ball drops, and I think he kicks it, and the runners are running like little leaguers, and he just kind of jogs to the left field line, and so he comes in, and I asked him, I said, "Are you hurt?" And he goes, "No." I said, "Okay, well then you need to go. You're done for the day." And then it became something that it shouldn't have become. If you remember, he came out and said, "Well," it became a media
It
storm.
was a frenzy. And this was
We,
2010. I'm
yeah,
wrong, not 2009.
it was a 10, and it became something that I think the people on the NFL Network were talking about it. I think Teddy Bruschi and were talking about it, saying if I was playing on that team, that guy would be stuffed in a locker. It's so it became, and only the reason it became that big of a deal was his comment, right? And Hanley and I, 15 years later, we're good. I think he learned from it. It was, yes, I'm mature. But he came out, he goes, he doesn't know. He's never played in the big leagues, you know. And I come out and said, well, does it matter if you play in the big leagues or not? When you lack a hustle, it's lack a hustle. But yeah, and then that was it. But I think it was something that we had to do. I think comes a time and place for every coach or every manager in whatever shape ball you coach or manage. There's a time and place where you gotta do something. If not, you lose the rest of the team.
Did you think about that when you went on? Because after the Marlins, you had quite a successful run as manager of the Braves, taking over for Bobby Cox, which I want to get to because that is a situation that is fraught with issues. But you were already, your bona fides had been taken care of as a big league manager. Did you have an example with any other players that you remember in your career, either minor or major league, where you had that moment where it was 24 sets of eyes plus front office plus coaching staff, and you knew as the number one, as the manager, you had to do something?
Yes, I did, and I think what helped me was my minor league managing career. I think there was certain times, certain situations where you had to do something, whether it's lack of hustle. So I had that in me, and I knew that I was right. When you know that you're right, the decision is easy, right? And that was that opportunity or that situation. I knew 100% that I was right, and I'm glad and so happy that our front office supported on that situation, and it was good, and it should, right? Every situation be supported that way. So I think my experience in the minor leagues helped me get through that situation.
You know, it's funny. We're watching what baseball has become. I want to talk about analytics a little bit, but there's a bunch of people who are becoming managers really soon after leaving the field as players, and they're not going through the minor leagues. They're just going right into the big league managing. And I'm wondering, as someone who did pay his dues, so to speak, coming up through the minor leagues, do you look at today's managers and say, wait a minute, why don't they have to do what I did?
I don't look at it that way, David. I look at it this way, like I just explained. You know, I wasn't ready, even though my resume said I was ready. I couldn't imagine, and some of those guys have been successful. All right, I couldn't imagine Aaron Boone when he first took over the Yankees. It's like, here you go, Booney, you just got the keys to the Ferrari, you know, and dealing in New York, and he never coached, never managed in the minor leagues. So I almost feel sorry at times, right? It's like, okay, I feel sorry that I know my experiences, and I know that I wasn't ready. I couldn't imagine what you're feeling, and maybe it's helped them that they play in the big leagues. It's not that big of a deal for them, but I know that of all the stuff that I've done, I wasn't prepared. And you see some guys that are, you know, you're not there, so you don't know what the struggles are and that they're dealing with day in, day out. But I could imagine. I just could imagine if I struggled. And we talk, Brandon Hyde and I speak about that all the time. You know, you see, and Brandon almost had the same career path that I have, and he felt the same way that first year. And you know, and I couldn't imagine where Aaron Boone or Stephen Voth or David Ross, and to name others that I can't even remember now. And all those guys have been successful in their part. So um, it is the way it is. I think our games it trends. You know, it's we want experience for 4 years, and then next year is like, no, experience doesn't matter, and then it comes back. And I think hiring and firing it's a trend, and you know, you have to be analytically savvy. And now it's coming, the needle's coming back to maybe experience matters, and you just got to be able to ride the ebbs and flows of that.
Well, remember, there's also managers who started. I think back to Ali Marmol or Rocco Baldelli or
Yeah,
Mark
there's
Kotsay, you know, guys who had a chance and they weren't ready, and it didn't. It some of them, you know, it takes a minute,
yeah.
and so when I think about what with you, Brandon Hyde, you bring up his name. Someone we had with the Marlins. He was our interim manager for a game or two. He then ends up managing the Orioles. And one of the very few examples of a manager who is there for a rebuild and gets to bear and witness and manage the fruits of that successful rebuild. Often there's a manager who takes care of the crap, and then you bring someone else in when it's winning time, supposedly.
Yeah,
You
David,
were
that doesn't happen. What happened here or here in Baltimore, that doesn't happen very often. I can't
very
see
rare.
another very, very rare, and good for, you know, Mike Elias. And I think it's the relationship, right? And I think Mike and Brandon are really, really good with each other. And yeah, but it doesn't happen. And, you know, and good for them. And every time I give both of those guys credit that they've been able to rebuild this, I think two years in a row of losing 100 or more, and then, you know, rebuilding, and make the last 2 years making the postseasons.
Was it when you went back after managing the Braves and then you were back with the Orioles, back as a coach, working with someone who you had worked with within the Marlins organization? Is there a sense of relief that you're not the number one guy, or is it the opposite where it's, wait a minute, I should be doing this, or I could be doing this? How did you feel in Baltimore?
Well, you know, I went to Miami after I got fired
With us,
with
we
us
had you back as a coach, which I was good.
yeah, and I was the third base coach, and I think I think that helped me transition a little bit to coaching. The bench coach position, and I guess it's used differently in different organizations. Bruce Bochy does not need a bench coach. You know what I mean? Uh, Bob Melvin does not need a bench coach, but Brandon Hyde at the time needed a bench coach, and he used me. He
What's the
used me.
role, Freddie? Tell the audience, what's the role of a bench coach?
Well, the bench coach is, you're almost like the assistant head coach or as the assistant manager, and you throw him scenarios. Okay, you know, what do you think? He'll ask me a question, and I'll tell him my opinion, because I have to be prepared as well as he is. I got to be able to think along with him, or maybe even think ahead of him, and give him scenarios. So it's an assistant It's like assistant manager. The only difference is at times is the 15th and 30th is a little different. The pay grade is a little different. And also at the end of the night, he's got to talk to the press and the general manager and then the ownership. And I close my book, go home, sit down with Trish, have a glass of wine, and there's no pressure, no phone calls, no nothing. But it's fun. And Brandon used me like I was managing the game, and we talked, and it was fun. It was fun. I wasn't just sitting there being the team mom, picking up the cups and making sure all the boys are hitting in the right in the right order. He used me. He used me extremely well, and I felt good about the way I've been used every night.
Did he ask for help with Jackson Holliday at all?
We talked about it. We talked about it as an organization a little bit, right? Because I think every organization is run differently, and the Orioles organization, they keep it the circle of I don't think I don't call it a circle of trust, but the circle of asking opinions about something is really really small. In my opinion, I thought that we brought him up way too early. And I don't know what the reason with the Orioles did. It brought up a 20-year-old kid that just, I think he had just gone through his high school prom, 10 months prior. And so I thought we brought him up too early, and Hyder and I privately talked about that. And we'll see what happens this year. I'm not a gambling man, but if I'm gonna gamble, I am gonna gamble that this young man's he's gonna do okay. The makeup is off the charts. The talent is off the charts. I think we just might have made a mistake and brought him up in a situation where, you bring up those kids when you're going to lose 100 games and you don't care, right? You just go, hey, go play, get your 400 at bats, and figure it out. We brought a young man that in the middle of a pennant race, and so that's difficult. And in the American League East,
was that a front office decision?
100%. That's 100%. I could honestly tell you that is nobody ever consulted me anyway, or asked my opinion on that.
Because you would have said no.
Yeah, I would have said no. I said it in spring training a little bit without even being asked, and then I said, "Listen, this guy struggles against left-handed pitching in the minor leagues, a little bit." And he's. But anyway, I think that Mike realized it fairly quick. I think he was only up there the first time, maybe 3 weeks or so. And we did a reboot, sent him back down to the minor leagues. And I think the second time he came up, he did a little bit better. But
were you guys in favor of sending him down?
Yes. It gets to a point where, like I said a little while ago, David, if you're not going to give him 400 at bats, if you're going to pinch hit for him when the time, when it's in the seventh inning and they're bringing a lefty, and if you're going to platoon your number one player in baseball or your best player in the minor leagues, then he's not ready. He's not ready to be in the big leagues. And I don't know what the reasoning was, but I think Mike and Brendan and whoever else was in that inner circle realized it fairly quickly and set him down.
Did it ever bother you when you would be blamed for a decision that you knew wasn't yours? Tell me how that works, because I can't get enough people to believe me that the front office really is very involved in things that are going on with players and with things, during, before, and after a game. But yet the manager is often going to be the fall guy.
Well, we're the face of the team, right? We're on the twice a day we do the media sessions. We do one before the game and we do one after the game. I thought, and we had tough decisions, right? When I was there with you and Larry, and I thought we could disagree, and I thought we did a really good job. We could disagree all we want behind closed doors and argue and yell and do all these things. But once that door opens and we go up to it's whatever decision we made in there, whether I like it or didn't like it, you stood by it. So those are, it happens. It happens. And I think, David, front offices are more involved now because analytics, right? They want to know, why didn't you, walk this guy? Well, I wouldn't say walk this guy. I don't like anybody getting walked, but why did you do this, or why didn't you play the infield in, or why didn't you play the infield back? Why didn't you pinch hit in the third inning? Situations that arose every game, and it's either an email or a Slack or a conversation. So I think that lineups, right? You and I and Larry and we would speak about lineups, and I remember a conversation without having any analytics with Larry Beinfest, and I said, he goes, "Hey, why don't you play Cody Ross against left-handed pitching?" And I said, "Well, I can't remember who was playing. I think it was Mezaga in front of him." And I'm like, I go, "Larry, you think Cody Ross can hit left-handed pitching?" And he goes, "Yeah, I think so." And it's we're just talking baseball. It wasn't analytic driven or anything. Well, guess what? Cody Ross made a hell of a career hitting left-handed pitching, and if you remember, and those were conversations that we have. So those conversations are fine, as long as behind closed doors. But
but are they happening anymore, Freddie? My view is that those conversations that we used to have don't happen as much because what's presented to the manager is this is how analytics, what they say to do at this situation, and that's what we're going to do.
I think I'm going to say, from my only experience, right? Because haven't been in 30 different clubs, but it doesn't. It happens. It happens where at the end of the day, here comes a piece of paper, and here's your options against tomorrow. David Samson's pitching, and here's your best lineup. And so those do happen, and I think anybody that tells you different, it's not telling you the whole truth. And I wasn't privy of going into the manager's office, even though I was the bench coach after ball games and talking about the lineup. There was many times where Hyder would tell me, "Hey, I want to play David tomorrow against his pitcher," and I'm saying, "Yeah, I like it. He's got good numbers against him. He needs to play. He hasn't played in 3 or 4 days. Run him in there." And when I got home, the lineup was texted, to everybody, and David wasn't in the lineup. And I'm like, wait a second. We just talked about David being in the lineup for tomorrow. So I know some conversation happened. I don't know if it's a piece of paper that came down, or I'm hoping it was a conversation that happened that changed his mind.
Not as often as you'd think.
Right.
And that's one of the big changes. And I'm thinking back now. I want to get to Bobby Cox, Hall of Famer Bobby Cox. Let me get this out of the way so you all listening and watching the show, thank you for doing that. You don't think that I'm going to avoid this. Yes, Bobby Cox and Jeffrey Loria had a problem. There is no question about that. Bobby Cox was not happy that we had fired you. And he went public, very public, questioning why we would have done that. And Jeffrey never forgot that. And it actually helped inform going forward things as spiteful as no video or no congratulations when he was on his farewell and etc. However, Bobby Cox, great manager. You get hired to take over for Bobby Cox. You have a rookie on your team named Freddie Freeman, and we all know what Freddie Freeman has become in the Hall of Fame trajectory. Tell me, and you won't make me feel badly, you walk into that clubhouse, second-time manager, you look around, are you saying to yourself, all right, I've made the big time? Or are you saying to yourself, oh, Christ, I got to follow Bobby Cox?
I didn't think of any of those things. But I knew I had a good club. But David, we had a good club in Miami when I got fired. I think we had just come the year before. I think we ended up winning 85 games with like a $10 million payroll, and we had all these young kids, and we started off. I think when I got fired in Miami, we were 2 games below 500 or something like that, and that's another story we could come back around. But no, I think as it went as it came back around with Bobby, I knew we had good talent there in Atlanta, and with Freddie Freeman and Jason Hayward and Chipper Jones. So I inherited a very good club. I think stepping in to follow Bobby was probably harder than managing the club. I didn't want to come in and wear jeans on the road, change all the rules that he had put into effect all the years there in Atlanta, and some of they still have. Wear your BP top, wear your hat all the time with the bill or the logo facing forward, sports coat on the road, slacks on the road, and I didn't want to just come in and no music in the clubhouse, and I didn't want to come in and disrupt that or change that for the respect that I had for him. As my tenure went on, we changed those things a little bit and tweaked them. And as far I saw Freddie Freeman in Los Angeles this summer, and I gave him a big hug, and I said, I first of all, I'm glad that your son was okay with the disease he had, but I'm like, what? I said, Free. I said there was a couple times during that first year I had, because Ugla was on that club.
Yes.
And I'm like, there was a couple of times during those first couple of years, I didn't think you were going to make it, and here you are, a father of 3 and a grown man and a tremendous baseball player and a tremendous father and a husband. But if you remember our man, Dan Ugla, and the best of the best, I love him. And I'm like, I don't know if you're going to make it. And here you are 15 years later, and you're doing well for yourself.
Freeman and Ugla are close friends, and it's a funny example where Ugla had I just did a show with Dan. I'm still very much in touch with him.
Good.
And I love Uggs, but he also knows that he lived a lifestyle that was not incredibly sustainable to be at the best of your ability to perform every single day. And young players don't think that age will do anything to them. And if you don't adjust your schedule, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And Dan will admit this to this day.
Yeah.
And if Freddie had gone that direction, I don't think Freddie would have been the Freddie of today.
No, it would have been. And it's funny, you told me the story because I love Dan Ugla, and I'm sure I haven't spoken to much since he's retired, but I love Danny. He's a lovable guy, right? And
He is.
I remember he invited me to his wedding, and then all of a sudden I didn't get him. I didn't get the official invitation. I think this was whatever, save the date, and you told me, you asked them, hey, why didn't you invite Fredi Gonzalez? And he goes, well, he left me off the playoff roster. I'm leaving off the wedding roster. It was so funny. I still get a kick at that. I still tell a story about that. But yeah, and so good for Freddie. And it was looking back, it's hard to step into somebody's role or position that has been that successful. I did an interview, I think in the winter of 23. One of the reporters asked me from Cleveland, because Stephen Both was getting ready to step in and follow Terry Francona, and we ended up talking for a while about the goods and the bads, about
replacing a legend,
right? And I said, well, I think you have to be yourself, and I think I think the experience I had with managing the Marlins at the beginning helped me transition into that.
But you said actually in the beginning you didn't want to make changes, and then something happened. You got your sea legs, or you got some sort of a bit more confidence that you said you started to implement changes.
Yeah, because
did you talk to Bobby before you did it?
I talked to Bobby a little bit, and he was like, "I don't care. Do whatever you want. It's your club." And I remember Terry McGurk coming into my office in Turner Field and just 25 minutes, 30 minutes before the game, and he goes, "Hey, Freddie, they're playing music in the locker room." And it's loud.
He's the chairman of the team.
Yeah, it's a chairman of the team. It still is. And and I go, yeah, Terry, it's their locker room. They, I changed a little bit of the rules, a little bit about the policy, and the starting pitchers picks the music, and it's 30 minutes before the game, and get the boys pumped up. But you thought that we were breaking some kind of rule, because he only knows Bobby Cox, and Bobby had no rules. And then little by little, talk to Sherholtz, talk to Frank Wren, and about these little things. Is like, hey, it's 2014. It's not 1990 or 2000s, and they were good with it. They were good with it, but it took a little while, and I think it took me a little while because the respect and admiration that I have for Bobby.
And so when Bobby says to you, "Hey, it's your team,"
Mm-hmm.
is that when you go home and you look in the mirror and you say, "Okay, like this is my team, and given that it's my team, I want to do the following." Is it really that sort of affirmation from the legend that opens the door for the change?
Yeah, and you know what, and David, I think it's also I don't have that ego, to come in, and I'm sure there's it's happened everywhere, whichever sport. There's people that come in and they have that ego. They come in and goes, "I'm just going to blow it up." You know what I mean? I remember when Jimmy Johnson came in and replaced Don Shula. He goes, it was commercials. We're going to reverse it. We're going to blow it up. We're changing the colors. And
There's
I
a
was,
new sheriff in town.
yeah. And I don't have that ego, that to be able to do that. And so I did it maybe differently. It took me a little while, but at the end, I think I was doing stuff that I wanted to do.
Tell me about this spring where this is, let me get the math right. Is this the first spring that you are not in uniform in how long, would you say?
Since 1982.
So that's 32, sorry,
40,
33 years. Is
33
it
or no,
more?
40. I'm 60 years old. So take 61.
It's
So
25 and 8, 33 years. Why
yeah.
43? You said 92.
No, 82,
Oh,
1982.
82.
82, yeah. 1982,
Coca, you
yeah.
can edit that out or make it so that I'm not deaf. This is your first year in 43 years that you're not at spring training in uniform.
That's correct. I signed out of high school in 1982, and I've been to spring training every year since, other than a year that I coached at the University of Tennessee.
Tell
Uh,
me everything. How do you feel right now as you're sitting here and spring training and the reporting day has happened? What are your emotions?
I My emotions are good, David, because I still want to work, right? I still want to work. I feel like I have the energy. I feel like I have the experience. I feel like I've been, 5 years with the Orioles, being through Analytic University, so I know all that stuff. And I for whatever reason, um, I'm not working. And I knew this might happen, even though I made phone calls and talked to people, and so I was prepared. So I'm now doing a couple of shows, pinch hitting, really, no pun intended, with MLB Network Radio,
Mhm.
and just for some, pinch it for a couple of hosts, and also I wanted to stay in the game somehow. So This is going to blow your mind. I am volunteer coach at a Division III college here in Pennsylvania at Ursinus University, and I called the guy from a friend of ours and got me together. He's a 30-year-old head coach, has been doing it for a couple of years, and I am having the time of my life. And I think that's what. And I told this to Trish. I'm like, honey, I cannot do anything. I can't sit around the house and do anything. So after we hang up here, I got to go to practice.
So wait, so you are in uniform this spring?
I am in uniform, but not in professional uniform. I am gonna and I don't even. I'm a volunteer coach. I don't even know if I got a uniform, But in a Division III, I don't know if I have a uniform. But I am, David. I am having the time of my life. Those 3 hours I spent with those kids, and it's D3, right? It's not University of Miami. It's not University of Tennessee. It's the bare bones. A small school. I think they have 1,700 kids, and like 70% are athletes, men and women. And so it's fun. It's 25 minutes from the house, and that's what's keeping my cup full. And talking to you, talking to baseball, talking about baseball makes me. Uh, I'm not gonna lie. There's some times where it's like pitchers and catchers reported today. But I
It
think,
still impacts me. I'm out of the game 7 years, Freddie,
yeah,
and my career was only 18 years.
right,
And when spring training comes, there's two times: when spring training comes and then when the playoffs start.
right.
I think that I miss it still to this day.
Yeah, I spring training was always my favorite part, or the very beginning of spring training, because you haven't seen the guys. You get all of a sudden you show up and you smell the grass. You hear the ball hitting the bat. You hear guys playing catch. You hear the laughter in the clubhouse. Everything is fun. Everything is new again, And so those first 2 weeks until you made the first cut, right? Everything was fun, and then you start making cuts, and then it becomes. I guess maybe the first cut is not as hard as the last couple cuts because those are hard because those guys, the longer that you keep them around, they feel like they make the teams, and sometimes they deserve to make the club. But
I
yeah,
want to go back to Division III because you're talking about players who are not going to be big leaguers for the most part. There may be, if you do Division III coaching for 10 years, you'll get maybe a big leaguer, maybe.
maybe.
It's really hard to get a big leaguer out of Division III. Do you, while you're coaching, are you worried that you will have professional expectations for Division III players? How are you going to manage the perfection that is your brain and baseball?
It's been easy so far. It really has been easy so far because I am, the talent is not the same as there's nobody in that Division III gymnasium that looks like Hanley Ramirez, but the effort is there, the energy is there, the fundamentals of baseball is there, and you know what? Okay, they're not the best players in the world, but they're still baseball, and the fundamentals are the same. Uh, the pitchers may not throw as hard or throw the nasty curveball, but you know what? They're trying. They're trying, and it just fulfills me. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I think maybe one in every division in the entire country of Division III maybe makes the big leagues every 10 years or so. Somebody
So how
just
does Kyle Lindsay, who's the head coach, how does he use you? How do you want to be used? Do you want to go through game situations with him? What do you think you can bring to bear to Division III?
well, experience, right? And we've been practicing since February the 1st. And most of the time we've been practicing indoors, which is new, right? Because it's so cold here in west of Philly. So we were indoors. So he's teaching me how to practice indoor and use your time constraints that you have because you only have 2.5 hours because the track team's coming in after, or the softball team, or or somebody else, the wrestling team's coming in after you. So you got 2.5 hours, and you got to practice everything you can. So and he's using me to talk about practice, right? And I'm like, Kyle, we have to do a better job. We got 50 kids here. I think we need to do a better job teaching these kids, practicing these kids, having setup instead of having 52 guys in a gymnasium, which is super good because it's they have an indoor track, so you could figure out how big it is. So we get our work done, but you got 4 coaches for 52 kids. So we need to do a better job in spending time with um, each position. So for example, I got 30 minutes with the catchers every day, and then they go into the fundamentals,
Do
and then
these kids know you?
yeah,
Are they starstruck by you at all? I mean, you're a
no.
big league manager coming into their gymnasium.
You know what? You'll get a kick out of this. You know what they love? They love to go to YouTube and see 18 minutes of my ejections. That they come up to me and it's like, you're so nice and you're so, and so that's gone around the team now, right? Everybody's, oh, you see
You'd get
Freddie's,
the ass, Freddie. You
yeah,
could get the
yeah.
ass.
And I tell them, I said, listen, I, I, out of 90% of those ejections were predetermined, so, but you know what? I don't think they're starstruck. I told them that I was here to help them. Whatever question comes arise, please come to me. And I'm genuine. I'm genuine with it. But yeah, it's the thing going around the team right now is Freddie's 18-minute ejections.
Are you throwing BP to them?
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
little known fact about Fredi Gonzalez, folks, the best BP pitcher I've ever had.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
were you were a manager and you were throwing to the I want to make sure I get it right because I think I'm going to. You threw to the final group.
yeah, yeah.
And the final group in baseball, there's groups of BP. The final group are always, the best of the best. And you want your best BP pitcher throwing to the final group. We used to have Pierre Arsenault, if you remember
Right.
that
Yeah.
name back in
Yeah.
the day.
Oh, of course. I
We
still
had him
keep
with
in
the
touch with them.
Expos. He
Yeah.
was a good BP.
Yeah.
But you, as manager, I never had a manager throw BP like you did.
Yeah. I still throw BPs.
Your
Yeah,
arm
you're right.
doesn't hurt?
Yeah. No. It feels good. It feels good. It's funny. The balls here in Division III are terrible, right? So it's the I called Fred Tyler from the Orioles when I got this opportunity to coach D3. I'm like, Fred, can you send my stuff? I didn't my fungo, and I had left a bag, and I said, can you send whatever you have there? So he sends me this box of balls, right? They might
The
be,
Rob Manfred regulation balls.
yeah, Rob Manfred regulation balls, and I open them, and they're batting practice balls, right? But ones are in the cage, so they're all scuffed up. They got blue marks, and I'm like, man, I shouldn't. I don't know if I should bring this to the team or not. This is kind of, you know,
You're big leaguing them.
they're big league, but they're bad balls, right? Balls that we go throw them out. We don't even use them for batting practice. So I go watch. I go do batting practice with them a couple of days later, and I'm like, oh my god, the balls that I brought are game balls compared to the ones we're using here. So I'm glad that I brought those balls for those kids. But those kids, I think so far, I don't think they're starstruck. I think they want for me to help them, and I love to help Kyle. Um, I passed the NCAA rules test just the other day.
You
You
had to
know,
study for that.
yeah.
How much time did you have to spend studying the
Well,
NCAA rule book for
I
that
didn't
test?
study at all because you could take it as many times as you want, and
Did you
so
fail it ever?
I know I got it. I got a passing grade. How about that? I think you got to get 50, and so I think I got 27 or 28 right, and the computer said, "Okay, you're passed." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
So
So I
what's an example of a question where you were like, "Are you kidding me? I have no godly idea what the answer to this is."
oh yeah, there's a couple of them, but there's some that you go, "What? This is stupid." But it's the NCAA, and if I remember right, it's like if it's snowing out, right? If it's snowing out and you're driving to campus and a couple of the kids that are in the baseball team, you can't pick them up and bring them in unless you could do that for other students that are not athletes. So there's funky rules, and I'm like, my God. But I guess those rules are there for some reason, right?
Hold on, let me get this straight. If you see two of your players stuck on the side of the road in a snowstorm, but they're not with non-athletes, you're not allowed to stop and pick them up.
Yeah, the way I understood that,
That's
that's
rough.
the way I read it. And but I guess it's there for some reason. And then the other ones you get a little technical on who could come to campus on an unofficial or official visit. But anyway, I passed it, and uh,
I
and
feel
it
for
was
you because think about tests that we had to take when we were younger. I couldn't pass a driving test today, a written driving test,
right.
or the bar that I took to become a lawyer. I'd fail it immediately. I'd go full John F. Kennedy Jr. And so I'm picturing you as a big league manager, an accomplished big league manager in sport for 43 years at Division III, trying to be helpful. You have an exam in front of you, and you're like, this is ridiculous.
It really is. And you're right. You know what? You're right about the driver's license test. I tried to help my youngest stepdaughter, and I took the test on computer. I don't know if you did that
Nope.
with your kids. I failed it.
100%.
I failed it. Here I am, but driving since I was 18 years old, and that never had an accident. Knock on wood, and I failed the test.
By the way, we would fail a third grade math test right now.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So, wait, how old are your stepchildren?
They're the youngest one now is 25, and then
Okay, so you're an empty nester.
yeah, it's me, Trish, and then the dog barks in the background every once in a while.
So I'm going to bring up something that you may tell me that you're not going to talk about, but I'm okay with that. I have tattoos, and I talk about you to this day because you had a wedding ring tattoo. Do you
Right.
remember? I mean,
Yep.
obviously you remember it. Do you still have it?
I still have it, and uh, Trish,
It's from your first wife, and we're okay. I'm
Pam.
divorced too. We can say
Yeah,
it. You're
yeah,
divorced, you're
yeah,
remarried and happy,
right.
and you have a wedding ring tattoo from your first marriage.
Correct. And my wife Trish, about first year into marriage, she goes, "I want you to get rid of that." And I laugh at her. I'm like, "Really? I got my wedding band over it. Nobody knows." She goes, "Yeah, but I know it's there." I'm like, "Okay." So we find a dermatologist or one of those tattoo places that erases tattoo. David, I did one session.
That
Ken,
was
I don't
it.
know if you ever had a tattoo removed.
No, I've
It
heard it hurts like
it
crazy.
hurts, and I told her, and I almost have tears in my eyes. It hurts so much. I'm like, you know what? That's it. I'm not coming back for another session. Either you got to live with this, or you know what? It'll be a second divorce.
I would do anything for love,
Yeah.
but I won't do that.
Yeah, I won't do pain, right? But yeah, it
Freddie,
hurts.
thank you.
No.
Freddie, we're out of time. I
Oh,
want to
man.
do this again. Can we do this again?
Let's do it again. Let's do it again after this D3 season. And February 22nd is the opening day. And you're invited if you want to come. You got to bring your
Absolutely.
park.
How far out of the city is it?
We're about 45 minutes outside Philly. 40
Oh,
minutes
I meant
outside.
New York.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah,
I
no,
say the city. I mean New York.
Okay, no, I don't know. Yeah, but yeah, I don't come in February though, David.
It's way too cold.
It's
I
way
do
too
want to
cold.
watch you. I want to see you in a Division III uniform, and I want to watch you do BP. Freddie,
Yeah.
thank you. I really do appreciate your time.